After the Holocaust, there was a period of profound silence, tremendous silence, because it was overwhelming. People didn't know what their future would be. They didn't know if they would have a future. People didn't know who their friends were. Did we have any friends? And then Elie Wiesel, the most eloquent spokesperson for the survivors, wrote the book Night. And it shook the world, and people started to speak. But even more importantly, then came the state of Israel. And now we had a voice. We had a voice. The difference between then and now is, number one, we don't have time for silence. We don't have the luxury of silence. Number two is becoming very clear who our friends are and who our friends aren't. But number three, this is a generation born after 1948. This is a generation with a state of Israel. This is a generation that doesn't question its future. It knows it has a future. It has to decide how it wants to frame that future, but the future is not in doubt, so there's no reason for silence. It's just a question of how to express it, how to reconstruct and rebuild, but there's no doubt, and there's no fear to speak up. And so we have with us this evening Millet Ben Haim, 28 years old, survivor of the massacre at the Nova Festival on October 7th. Millet ran from Hamas terrorists for 2 hours. She dodged bullets. Some of her friends were murdered right beside her. She found a spot in the bushes with 3 other friends. They hid there and they waited for 6 hours until she was rescued. And ever since that fateful day, that day of horror, she is committed to sharing her story, to tell her story, and the story of those who can't speak, but with her and others will have their voices heard. She'll speak around the world. She'll speak at campuses in this country in order to fight anti-Semitism and spread the truth about what happened on that day. She has a BA in criminology, sociology, and anthropology. Was on her way to become a therapist, but she's put it on hold because she has a story that she has to tell first. As she reconstructs her life, she has to construct it from the story that she's going to tell for many, many months or even years to come. And so we are privileged. It's a kavod gadol. We're humbled to have Millet with us here to tell her story, to share the stories of her friends who only can be heard through her voice. Vakasha.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. Hello. So my name is Millet, and I will share my story. But before I do, I want to say I do go for the past few months around the world and trying to share my story. But when I go on campuses, it's very different for me than events like this one. It's very important for me that even though my story is difficult, we will all remember that the reason I'm doing it is to raise light and hope and to help us all feel more united. So let's try to keep that at our heart while I'm sharing my story, okay? I'll try to remind us also throughout the story. Okay, So I was at the Nova Music Festival, and well, the only thing that is important for me to share about this kind of events is that it's very, very loving and safe space for us. It's more of a community than any other thing, and usually you see the same people over and over in different parties. And I went to this specific party with 4 other friends and a lot of people that I barely know. The majority of my friends, thankfully, couldn't come to this event. But I knew I would feel completely comfortable since it's such a strong community and everybody is so loving and welcoming. And so we went to the party. We arrived around 2 a.m. and we danced throughout the night. It was a very joyful event. And we watched the sunrise together. And at 6:30, the music stopped. And we noticed a massive barrage, just tons of rockets flying above our head. And we debated what we should do because it's an open field, so the protocol is to lay down on the ground and cover your head. But also, it didn't stop, and we thought we should get going. So we debated for a few minutes. Also, being Israeli, you're kind of used to have rockets. So I think, well, at least for the first 5 minutes, we kind of thought that maybe it will stop and we can resume the party. But we understood that that is not the case, and we decided to go. I actually took the car keys of a friend that I just met that night, because I was pretty much the only one among our friends that was sober. That is the truth. And I just tried to put as many people in this car as possible and started driving. I tried to drive not from the main path, just because you can imagine we're over 3,000 people trying to escape at the same time. And I'm trying not to cut lines and not to interfere anyone. And I want to say that the circumstances was so rough, but it felt like we're still a community and everybody's being so thoughtful. I was able to get us to the sort of main road, if I can call it that, and I made a right turn. But after a minute, I had to stop because the terrorists waited and shot all the cars. I made a very quick U-turn and started driving like crazy to the other direction, but after 2 minutes I had to stop again. The terrorists, they knew that we only have this one road to escape, so they waited on both sides and just started closing on to us. At that point, we decided to ditch the car and run towards the fields. And so we thought we would follow the sun because that is, we just saw the sunrise, so that would mean that's the opposite side of Gaza. But we couldn't really do that because it didn't matter where we went to. We saw other people screaming that they're being shot at and that we need to go to the other direction, and we kind of found ourselves running back and forth in between the terrorists. At a certain point, we saw this group of soldiers, and so we started running towards them. But then I noticed they're carrying RPGs, which is something in between a gun and a missile. And the IDF does not use this kind of brutal weapons like that. We only use weapons on that scale if we're trying to take down houses, but never just walking with them like that. And so I understood that we're actually running towards terrorists now. So we found ourselves running to the other direction, but towards the bullets. The best way for me to describe it is if you ever had one of those nightmares when you feel like you are running slow and you want to be faster, but you can't, and you can kind of feel in your back you're about to be grabbed. So it's like that, but I'm not dreaming. And I felt like I'm about to have a heart attack because it's so scary. And you feel so helpless. And at that point, I'm starting to see people just falling down. But luckily, I had another voice in me that tells me that there's no use in being scared right now. I can only do what I can do, which is keep on going and not give up, and to try and find a place to hide. I found this small, sort of like a valley with some plants, and me and 3 other girls, we crawled into this something in between a tree and a bush. At that point, we were already running for 2 hours straight, and we just realized that we're moving targets and there is no way of going out. They are surrounding us from everywhere. And so we just stayed silent as possible. I tried to call the police, but they didn't answer for a very long time. And when they did, they told us that they're sorry, but we're on our own and we should hang in there because all the kibbutzim around, they're being held by terrorists now. And so I realized I have to contact my family. Until that point, I didn't want to concern them, but I knew I have to. And so I sent our location, and I didn't specify too much because, again, I didn't want to make them worry, but I explained that we're in danger and we need help. And I knew I have to save battery, so I thought what would be a sentence that would be good enough as my last words to them. Eventually, I wrote that I really loved them and that I'm happy with the life I had, because I kept thinking they're going to have to go through this right now. The image of my family mourning over me, and I thought that maybe this would give them some comfort to know that at least I'm happy with what I had. The shooting around is, you can hear the whistle above your head, so it's very close. And it kept getting closer and closer until they found this Israeli guy that was hiding near us. We could hear him screaming for help. And it's devastating not to be able to help someone. We could hear them walking and talking and laughing, which for me was the most terrifying part, because to witness this kind of evilness and to see that they can laugh at the same time, it's just terrifying. And at that point, I started to pray that a rocket will hit me, because I knew that if they will find us, I'm sorry about what I'm about to say because there is kids here, but I knew that if they will find us, they will rape us. And of course, I didn't know that they were doing the same thing to so many other girls at the same time. But luckily, we had a miracle, and they just didn't notice us and kept going. And well, at that point, I lost hope, but I told you that I'm here trying to raise hope. And so I want to tell you that at this specific point, my younger brother decided to text me that he trusts me over 100%. And I'm saying that because the power of love and words is so strong, because that was the only thing I needed to be reminded that I can't lose hope, and I have to get back to him. He's like my son. I'm 10 years older than him. And so I started posting on Instagram, trying to find any way possible to get us out of there. And somehow we got connected to Rami Davidian. Maybe you heard his name. I know he visited here. So he's a hero, that just a person that voluntarily decided to go and rescue people. And he said he's going to try and find us. At a certain point, I noticed that I have 3% of battery left in my phone, and I realized I have to turn it off. And so I asked Rami to not give up on us. And he said that he's gonna honk the horn of his car until he finds us, which is incredible, to be so selfless, to actually be willing to draw attention in this so dangerous place. It's beyond, I don't even have the words. And so we waited. And at that point, we're 6 hours in the bushes. And suddenly we hear a car. And I'm trying to turn on my phone again, and I luckily still have 2% left. And I call him and I try to understand if that's him, and he says that he thinks that's him, but he's not sure. And I realize I have to get out of our hiding place, which is very scary, because this entire time the shooting does not stop. And the rockets, of course. And so I knew that this is my only chance. This is the best odds I'm gonna get in being rescued. And I looked at the girl beside me, that they were all younger than me and not in a very functioning mode. And so I just started crawling outside, trying to get to this small path that I knew that a car can go into. And I noticed a car, but the car was driving really fast, and so I thought that can't be him, because he's gonna try to find us, he's gonna drive slow. But for some reason, I had a good feeling about this car, and so I squeezed my eyes and tried to understand who's inside. And then I noticed a sticker that says something in Hebrew. And so I raised my body for 2 seconds, hoping the car will notice us, and went back down. And they actually did notice us. And in this car, there was Leon Bar, which is another hero that voluntarily decided to go in and rescue people. He went back for us. We got into his car. The second we got into the car, my phone died. We saw many other people from the party in the car who were sitting like on top of each other. He was actually working with Rami, and so he was able to get us to his car, which was a minute away. They brought us to Patish, which is a village nearby. We waited in a shelter for a few more hours, because we still had terrorists around us and the rockets. And around 7 p.m., we were finally able to get to Beersheba, which is a city nearby, and rescued. And so that is my story. I do want to say one thing about Leon Bar, the hero that saved us. He kept on going for 2 days, just back and forth, trying to rescue as many people as possible until he was murdered. And so I just want to pay respect and gratitude. There are really no words that will be enough. And before I will get off this stage, I want to say one thing. There is a quote that has led me through life ever since I'm young, but definitely ever since October 7th, and I want to share that with you. It's in Hebrew, so I will translate. It says that there will not be a victory of light over darkness until we recognize the simple truth that instead of fighting darkness, we should turn on the light. And so I encourage us all to keep raising light and to find the good and to stick to love, because I really do believe that that is the solution, and we will all get better and stronger. Thank you.
You have an enormous amount of courage, not only what you went through, but to tell it over and over again and to share the story because it's so painful. And by doing that, you're enlightening us so that we can help fight the battle. And as you're going to see on the campuses as you go through, we got a big battle to fight, not only in Israel, but we have to fight that in America. And we are devoted as a Jewish community. I think you might have started to see it. We are totally, completely committed to fighting this battle, spreading the light and spreading the truth, and bringing in more friends and more supporters for the Jewish people and for Israel. So thank you so much, and we wish you much success in the next days as you continue to tell the story.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And if I just may add, thank you so much. I really do feel all this support. And I just want to say that I'm collaborating with an organization that's called Survive to Tell. And so if you want to hear further about this and see if there is a way that we can also collaborate, then feel free to reach me later. Thank you so much.